Good morning, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Cannizzaro, Neal, Wynn, Stone, Taylor, Titus, Dondero Loop, Assembly Members Anderson, Backus, Brown May, Dickman, Hafen, Hibbets, Howdgy, Koenig, Muska, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Yeager, and Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. We will have members leaving to present bills, go to work sessions. We're at that time of the session, so please do not take the movement of the committee as being rude or inattentive or just at that time. I ask if you have any electronic devices that you silence them, put them on mute so they do not disrupt today's meeting. We will have public comment at the end of today's meeting, and public comment, if you'd like to speak, will be 2 minutes. The call-in number is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID is 875-584-09-829. Then please press pound. Members, we have budget closings today from the Governor's Office of Finance and the Treasurer's Office. And without any further delay, we'll invite the GFO to the table. Our staff to the table for the GFO's budget closing. They got nervous over there. Sorry. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Alex Hartz, Fiscal Analysis Division. I will be presenting for closing 3 budgets this morning for the Governor's Finance Office. They are welcome to join me if they would like to, but I assume I'll be here alone. So the first closing is for the Budget Division, Governor's Office of Finance. The closing begins on page 3. There is one major closing issue. The committees will remember that for fiscal year 27, the executive budget recommended $1.6 million in general fund appropriations to fund 12 positions in the Governor's Finance Office that perform oversight, management, and supervision of the executive branch's expenditure of Federal American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Funds. For fiscal year 26, the Governor recommended the 12 positions and their associated operating costs be funded with $1.8 million in federal coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds. If you turn to page 2 of the closing document, or page 4, I apologize. As budgeted, 9 of the positions were to be funded through April 30th, 2027, with the other 3 funded through June 30th, 2027. The committees will recall that during the budget hearing, the Governor's Finance Office indicated that a budget amendment would be submitted to revise the number of positions that would be continued, as well as to correct the funding sources for the positions. So on February 28th, which was the day of the budget hearing, the Governor's Finance Office submitted Budget Amendment A25-392-1340 to revise both the E499 and E599 decision units. And the actions of the budget amendment are laid out at the bottom of page 4. What they include is the elimination of 5 vacant positions in fiscal year 2026 and additional 3 positions in 2027, as well as correcting the intended funding. So at the bottom of page 4, the committee will see that 5 positions which are vacant and their associated ARPA funding are recommended to be eliminated on July 1, 2025. One position is recommended to be funded with ARPA funding for fiscal year '26 only, and then eliminated on July 1, 2026, which is the start of fiscal year '27. Two positions are recommended to be funded with ARPA funding for fiscal year 2026 and 10 months of fiscal year 2027, which is April 30th, 2027, and then the positions are eliminated. That is the April 30th, 2027 is the end date by which the state can expend existing ARPA funds for oversight reporting and to wrap up the monitoring phase. Two positions are recommended to be funded with ARPA funding for fiscal year 2026, and then the 10 months of 2027, and then funded for 2 months, the remaining 2 months of fiscal year 2027, with general fund appropriations. Staff would note that the Governor's Finance Office intends that these two positions are to be ongoing funded with general fund appropriations in future biennia. Then at the top of page 5, one position is recommended to be funded 100% with general fund appropriations in place of ARPA funding effective July 1, fiscal year 2026, and assigned to work on the statewide cost allocation plan, which we refer to as SWICAP, and Attorney General Cost Allocation Plan, which we refer to as AGCAP, for the upcoming biennium. The GFO intends that this position is to be ongoing funded with general fund appropriations in future biennia, and to continue working on SWICAP and AGCAP and special projects. Lastly, one position is recommended to be funded 50% ARPA funding and work on ARPA management and compliance, and 50% funded with general fund appropriations, and also work on the SWICAP, AGCAP management effective July 1, 2025, and continue that workload for the 25-27 biennium. The Governor's Finance Office intends that this position is also to be ongoing and funded with general fund appropriations in future biennia. The budget amendment A25-392-1340 revises the budgeted funding through the elimination of 8 positions for the upcoming biennium. Of note, general fund appropriations increase by approximately $223,000 in fiscal year '23, but decrease by $1.4 million in fiscal year 2027, with a net decrease over the upcoming biennium of $1,128,602. Federal ARPA funds increase in the first year as well as the second year for a net increase of $1,285,609 over the biennium. If the budget amendment is not approved, it reverts to what is included in the governor's recommended budget. So the decision for the committees is, do the committees wish to approve decision units E499 and E599 as revised by budget amendment A25-392-1340, which would, 1, eliminate 5 vacant positions funded with ARPA funding effective July 1, 2025, fund 1 position with ARPA funding through June 30th, 2026, with that position eliminated July 1, 2026, fund 2 positions with ARPA funding through April 30th, 2027, with those positions eliminated May 1st, 2027, fund 2 positions with ARPA funding through April 30th, 2027, and then with general fund appropriations through June 30th, 2027, revise the funding for 1 position from ARPA funding to 100% general fund appropriations effective July 1, 2025 for the 2025 biennium, or 25-27 biennium, and revise the funding for 1 position to be 50% ARPA funding and 50% general fund appropriations effective July 1, 2025 for the 25-27 biennium.
Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff.
Second.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assembly Member Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. On the top of page 6, there are 5 other closing items. Staff would point to other closing item number 5, which represents a second budget amendment that was submitted on February 28th. This is Budget Amendment A2540-21340. And this budget amendment has 3 actions. The first is to reclassify the existing vacant, unclassified Budget Division Administrator position to be an unclassified Deputy Director position. This reclassification adds total general fund appropriations of $23,288 in fiscal year 2026 and $23,265 in 2027 to fund the increased salary and fringe benefit costs. Secondly, the budget amendment eliminates the remaining $85,000 of overtime in the fiscal 2026 base budget, which is in conjunction with other closing item number 4 in the table, so 100% of the overtime that was in the budget is removed. And then the third action is the budget amendment establishes $61,712 in 2026 expenditure authority to allow for the hiring of temporary contract staff to work on an as-needed basis. In total, the net general fund impact of the actions recommended in Budget Amendment A2540-21340 is $0 in fiscal year 2026 and $23,265 in fiscal year 2027. Fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 4 be closed as recommended by the governor, and other closing item be closed as amended in Budget Amendment A2540-21340, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. You can continue on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. The next budget, the Division of Internal Audits, begins on page 9 of your closing packet. There were 2 major closing issues. The first was the addition of general fund appropriations for 1 new auditor position. The committees will recall that at the February 28th budget hearing, the Governor's Finance Office testified that a budget amendment would be submitted and that this position would be eliminated. If you turn to page 9, fiscal staff would note that on February 28th, staff did receive budget amendment A25309134 from the Governor's Finance Office, which eliminated this position in its entirety, which has the effect of removing $210,210 in general fund appropriations over the biennium. The decision for the committees is, do the committees wish to accept Budget Amendment A25309134, which eliminates Decision Unit E302, thereby not approving general fund appropriations of $210,200 over the 25-27 biennium to fund 1 new executive auditor branch position.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair, as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other major closing issue begins on page 10, and that's number 2. And this was related to the E499, E59 decision unit. The Governor's Finance Office submitted a budget amendment to remove the federal ARPA funds that were inadvertently left in the budget when the E499 and the E59 were built. So at the top of page 11, the budget amendment that was submitted, and it's the same budget amendment, A25309134, proposes to remove $6,597 in fiscal year '26 and $3,299 in fiscal year '27. The decision for the committees are, do the committees wish to approve decision units E499, including budget amendment A25-309-1342, which removes budgeted ARPA coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds authority, and do the committees wish to approve decision unit E599, which adds general fund appropriations of $189,346 in fiscal year 2026 and $188,668 in fiscal year 2027 to continue one existing executive branch auditor 4 position and associated operating costs for the 25-27 biennium.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair, as read by staff.
Second?
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are 3 other closing items. Other closing items number 2 and number 3 are also part of the submitted budget amendment. Other closing item number 2 is through the amendment removes general fund appropriations included in the budget totaling $14,634 in fiscal year 2026 and $17,932 in fiscal year 27 that were included for purposes of funding the audit Division of Internal Audit's audit software. That funding is unnecessary. They could fund it otherwise. And then other item number 3, as proposed in the budget amendment, the governor's office is eliminating this decision unit, which was inadvertently included in the governor's recommended budget. The effect of this is to restore funding to the personnel costs, which the budget account will need. Across all decision units, the net general fund impact of budget amendment A25-309-1342 is a reduction in general fund appropriations of $28,574 in 2026 and $27,448 in fiscal year 27, or just over $56,000 over the biennium. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing items be closed as amended, as recommended by the governor, with other closing items 2 and 3 as revised by budget amendment A25-309-1342, and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved, as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final budget I'm presenting this morning begins on page 15. This is the special appropriations budget account. There are no major closing issues. The other closing items table on page 16 provides the committees with information about funding that is included in the base budget and has been included in the base budget over the prior biennia. The governor's recommended budget continues this level of funding. Fiscal staff recommends the other closing items be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I will accept a motion.
So moved, as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we'll have a switch as we end the Governor's Office of Finance, and then we will invite staff to the table for the Treasurer's Office. You can start whenever you're ready, and good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Adam Dross with the Fiscal Analysis Division. Today, the committees will be closing 11 state treasurer budget accounts, and the first account is the state treasurer budget account. There are two major closing issues with this budget, and the first is the replacement cash management system. The governor recommends a general fund appropriation of $609,000 in fiscal year 27 to fund the ongoing cost of a replacement cash management system. As background, the state utilizes a centralized bank account that is managed, owned, and reconciled by the office. However, the recording of funds is decentralized, that the office must identify incoming funds and request documentation from state agencies to reconcile the bank records, and state agencies must review and claim outstanding funds. The office indicates that it has an existing cash management system that was developed in-house, but it's not compatible with the new state financial system that was implemented through the new Core NV project that was implemented in December 2024. Because of this, there have been delays in the reconciliation of deposits and a number of exceptions, which are transactions that require staff review. In January 2025, the office indicated that they were seeing on average about 3,300 exceptions, when normally they saw about 1,200 exceptions on a daily basis prior to the Core NV project. The office indicates it's developing a replacement cash management system in partnership with the Office of Project Management. And the office indicates the initial cost to implement this system would be paid by the Office of Project Management in fiscal year 26, with future costs paid by the State Treasurer's Office. During the budget hearing, the office indicated that since the COVID-19 pandemic, it has seen an increase in automated clearinghouse or electronic transfers rather than paper checks. The office clarified it maintains an exception list that identifies transactions that have not been reconciled but do not reflect a corresponding cash receipt entry in the state accounting system. The office indicated the Office of Project Management assisted with developing a short-term, limited functionality solution and program. And the office indicates it downloads an exception report every day, and 5 staff members work on reconciliation for items that have not been claimed. The increases in exception has been somewhat addressed through the temporary solution provided by the Office of Project Management, and the office indicates that the number of exceptions has decreased from those amounts seen in January 2025, currently averaging approximately 1,500 items on a daily basis. However, this account is still greater than the average daily listing of exceptions of 1,200 prior to the implementation of the Core NV system. The office also indicates that the number of exceptions tends to grow and fluctuate based on the various transactions and activities of state agencies. And to maintain a manageable level of exceptions, the office indicates a functioning cash management system is still required. And this new system would provide agency staff with access to the transaction data to claim funds in a more expeditious and efficient manner. Fiscal staff confirmed that funding of $609,000 in fiscal year 2026 is included in the Core NV budget account, which is the office's estimated implementation cost of the new cash management system. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 21. And do the committees wish to approve a general fund appropriation of $609,000 in fiscal year 2027 to fund the ongoing cost of a replacement cash management system contingent upon the approval of funding in the Core NV budget account to implement the system?
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. You can continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second major issue in this budget account are new positions for the Operations Division and the Debt Management Division. And the Governor recommends a new Administrative Services Officer position to provide support to the Operations Division and a new Management Analyst position to provide support to the Debt Management Division. And these positions would be located in Carson City. The office indicates the new Administrative Services Officer position would assist with fiscal and budget responsibility, allowing the Senior Deputy Treasurer and Chief Deputy Treasurer positions to provide management and increased oversight of the office's divisions. The office also indicates the new management analyst position would provide support to the debt management division, including assistance with the reconciliation, collection, and preparation of accounting documents for bond debt service payments. During the budget hearing, the office indicated the new administrative services officer position would plan, organize, and oversee agency program accounting functions. The office indicated with the addition of programs established for the office by the 2023 legislature, the office now maintains approximately 34 executive and non-executive budget accounts. The office also indicated that senior level staff are heavily involved in fiscal operations, and in addition, the governor's finance office staff also relied on heavily for assistance. And the new position would assist with this workload by serving as the single designated fiscal person for the office. The office also indicated the new management analyst position would assist with debt service tasks, ensuring bond debt service payments are recorded timely, monitoring of debt-related legislation, assistance with the reconciliation, collection, and preparation of accounting documents. The office indicated that debt issuances overseen by the Debt Management Division have increased in volume and complexity in recent years, and this work is anticipated to continue in the future. So this decision for the subcommittees can be found on page 23. And do the committees wish to approve total funding of $380,502 with general fund of $17,926 over the 2025-27 biennium for a new administrative services officer position to provide support to the operations division, a new management analyst position to provide support to the debt management division, and associated operating costs. Fiscal staff request authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved as read by staff, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero-Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other closing items can be found on page 23 of your packet, and this includes a funding source change, public official insurance bond, subscription, travel, and the like. There's also a technical adjustment for some equipment replacement, and fiscal staff entered a technical adjustment to reflect 8 rather than 10 replacement laptop computers. There's also a contract cost transfer to the bond interest and redemption fund account, and fiscal staff entered a technical adjustment to reflect the correct funding source for that transfer. So fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 5 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing items 6 and 7 be closed with the noted technical adjustments to reflect the reduction in replacement equipment and correct the funding source for a contract, and request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero-Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. Go on to the next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget can be found on page 25 of your packet, and this is the Nevada Employee Savings Trust Admin Account. This is a new budget for the 2025 session after Senate Bill 305 of the 23 legislative session was passed. This establishes a retirement savings account for private sector employees with a statutory effective date of July 1st, 2025. I would note the Senate Bill 305 provided a one-time general fund appropriations of $1.2 million over the 23-25 biennium to the State Treasurer's Office for administrative costs of the program. And this is a loan that must be repaid as soon as the office has received sufficient money for the operation of the program. There's one major closing issue for this budget, and that is the update on the program and additional financial support from the general fund. The governor recommends general fund appropriations totaling $1.5 million over the 2025-27 biennium to provide continued funding to the Nevada Employee Savings Trust Program and its 3 positions. The Board of Trustees of the Nevada Employee Savings Trust were appointed by June 2024, and numerous meetings have been held in fiscal year 2025 to launch a fully operational program by the statutory implementation date of July 1st, 2025. The board recommended an interstate partnership with Colorado's Partnership for a Dignified Retirement Program, and the office estimates a total of 16,000 funded accounts in FY26 and 27,000 funded accounts in FY 2027. As previously mentioned, the governor recommends general fund appropriations totaling $1.5 million over the 2025-27 biennium for the program. And although this is not explicitly reflected in the executive budget, the office and the governor's finance office indicate this funding would be provided as a loan. Therefore, if the committees wish to provide this funding as a loan, as recommended, appropriate language would need to be included in the back language of the 2025 Appropriations Act. The table on page 27 of your closing packet reflects the proposed expenditures for this account as recommended by the governor. And I would note that as of today, the three positions reflected in that account are currently filled. I would also note that most program expenditures generally align with the fiscal note submitted for SB 305 from last session. However, their cost of $75,000 per biennium on an ongoing basis for marketing costs, and the governor recommends expenses of $199,800 in each year of the biennium for marketing expenditures. During the budget hearing, the office provided an update on the program and indicated this would provide an automatic individual retirement account savings program for Nevada employers that have 5 or more employees, have been in business for at least 36 months, currently do not offer a workplace retirement plan, and they would be required to participate in the program. The office indicated that employees would be automatically enrolled and may choose a contribution rate, select from several investment options, opt out at any time, and withdraw their contributions. Regarding the program's marketing costs, the office indicated they were developed based on communication with other states with similar programs and the lessons learned, which indicated that they had wished that they had provided additional marketing and outreach expenditures. They also indicated that the marketing and vendors and all material produced would be provided both in English and Spanish, and this contract would provide funding for public relations, branding, audience analysis, and advertising. The Board of Trustees of the Nevada Employee Savings Trust met in January 2025 and confirmed the partnership with the program for the state of Colorado's program. And the board also established a state account fee of $4, which the office indicated it cannot accurately reflect the total number of counts for this program given the lack of history. Therefore, the office indicated that it would still require the loan from the general fund of $1.5 million over the upcoming biennium, as recommended by the governor, but without a defined repayment date. Based on the office's planned $4 annual account fee and the projected funded accounts of $16,000 in fiscal year 2026 and $27,000 in fiscal year 2027, the committees may wish to reflect this projected revenue in the budget account with an equal expense in a new general fund payback category. This would total approximately $64,000 in fiscal year 2026 and $108,000 in fiscal year 2027 and provide a mechanism for equal general fund repayments. Staff from the office as well as the governor's finance office were consulted on this technical adjustments and agreed with the calculation and mechanics. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 28 of your packet. Do the committees wish to approve general fund appropriations of $733,159 in fiscal year 2026 and $785,140 in fiscal year 2027 to provide continued funding for the Nevada Employee Savings Trust Program and its 3 positions, and provide this funding as a loan that must be repaid to the general fund as soon as the office has received sufficient money for the operation of the program, and provide fiscal staff with authority to include this repayment language in the back language of the 2025 Appropriations Act, and provide fiscal staff with authority to enter a technical adjustment to reflect the projected account fee revenue of $64,000 in fiscal year 2026 and $108,000 in fiscal year 2027, and equal projected general fund repayments, and provide fiscal staff with authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. That was a mouthful. Members, any questions? Not seeing any. I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero-Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the healthcare student loan repayment budget, and this can be found on page 31 of your packet. This similarly is a new budget for this session after Assembly Bill 45 of the 2023 legislative session was passed that created the student loan repayment for providers of healthcare in underserved communities program, which is also referred to as the Nevada Health Equity and Loan Assistance, or the HEAL program. This program provides the repayment of up to $120,000 of student education loans for a qualified healthcare provider who works in certain underserved communities in the state. Program participants must commit to at least 5 years of clinical practice as a healthcare provider in the state. To fund the program, the annual transfers of $2.5 million are provided from the Abandoned Property Trust Budget Account, or the Unclaimed Property Program. There's one major closing issue for this account, and that's the update on the establishment and operation of the HEAL program. The executive budget for the 2025-7 biennium provides total revenue of $7.5 million in fiscal year 2026 and $8.9 million in fiscal year 2027 for the program. And on your table on page 32 provides the governor's recommended expenditures related to this program. I would note there are some reserves created for this program, which reflects the future funding that would be provided as the cohorts that are approved for this funding receive funding over that 5-year period. And that funding is placed in reserve for those future year payments. The office provided an update on the program and indicated they established funding ranges available for the program, with funding of up to $120,000 provided for some positions, such as dentist physicians, down to a low of $15,000 for other positions, such as paramedics and emergency medical technicians. The office indicated it opened the application process for the first cohort in January 2025 and closed in February 2025. The office indicated the initial application approvals will occur in April 2025, and it plans on providing grant funding to 50 to 70 healthcare providers for loan repayments each fiscal year. However, that's dependent on the amount and the providers approved for the program. The executive budget reflected various enhancements for this budget account that can be seen on the middle of page 33 of your packet, and this includes a public official bond, insurance bond, in-state and out-of-state travel, maintenance and support of a shared computer customers relationship management system, and the State Treasurer's Office cost allocation. The governor's recommended budget also provides marketing services for a total cost of $76,998 over the biennium, and these marketing costs did not appear to be contemplated and included when the office submitted its fiscal notes for AB 45 during the 2023 legislative session. During the budget hearing, the office indicated it received 881 applications, and the office provided the number of applications by type, which can be seen on page 34 of your closing packet. The largest number included licensed nurses at 27.2%, followed by applicants performing various aspects of social work. The office also confirmed during the budget hearing that it anticipates awarding funding to 50 to 70 healthcare providers. During the budget hearing, the office was also asked about the marketing services, and it indicated it plans to utilize this funding to market and publicize the relatively new program, as well as implement a survey to receive input from applicants of the program. However, the office indicates this funding, which is budgeted in the standard operating expenditure category, should be budgeted in the outreach, promotion, marketing expenditure category. And this revision appears reasonable, and the Governor's Finance Office concurs with this change. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 35. Do the committees wish to approve the inclusion of the new healthcare student loan repayment budget account in the 2025 Authorizations Act, total funding of $7.5 million in fiscal year 2026 and $8.9 million in fiscal year 2027 for the student loan repayment of providers of healthcare in underserved communities program, Decision Units E225, E226, E245, and E801 to support various operating costs and contributions to cost allocations, a technical adjustment to reflect the annual marketing cost of $38,499 in the outreach, promotion, marketing expenditure category rather than the operating expenditure category, and authority for fiscal staff to enter any necessary technical adjustments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I will accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget can be found on page 37 of your packet, and this is the Higher Education Tuition Admin Account. And this budget account provides for administration of the prepaid tuition program and is currently funded with transfers from the College Savings Endowment Account. There's one major closing issue in this account, and that's the budget enhancements and funding revision for the prepaid tuition program's administrative costs. The executive budget recommends total funding of $170,583 over the 2025-27 biennium for various enhancements, as well as a revision to the funding source for this budget account, so it is largely funded by transfers from the Higher Education Tuition Trust budget account, with funding totaling $2 million over the 2025-27 biennium. The executive budget recommends total transfers from the Higher Education Tuition Trust budget account of $170,583 over the upcoming biennium for enhancements that are detailed on the table on page 38 of your packet. This includes in-state travel for staff, as well as increase of a temporary contract staff from approximately 0.4 FTE to a full-time position, and this was previously shared with the unclaimed property account. There's also a database service to identify fraud, the public official insurance bond portion, increased marketing costs, shared customer relationship management system, and the office cost allocation. As previously mentioned, the executive budget includes a recommendation to revise the funding source for this budget account from the College Savings Endowment Account to the Higher Education Tuition Trust. As background, the College Savings Endowment Account currently receives funding from the state's 529 College Savings Plan, or Tax Advantage Savings Account for higher education. The Higher Education Trust Account receives its funding from fees, interest, and income earned on the state's prepaid tuition program. I would note this budget would continue under the governor's recommendation to receive funding from the College Savings Endowment Account for approximately 50% of a management analyst position who serves both the prepaid tuition account and the 529 College Savings Plan. Some background, this budget historically was funded with transfers from the Higher Education Tuition Trust, since both accounts were related to the prepaid tuition program. However, during the Great Recession, there were concerns about the financial viability of the prepaid tuition program, indicating liabilities were greater than assets in the Higher Education Tuition Trust. Accordingly, the Interim Finance Committee in April 2010 approved the change for this funding source to the College Savings Endowment Account, and this funding mechanism has been used since FY 2010. The office indicates that since the Great Recession has passed and the fund's potential inability to meet its obligations are no longer issues, and this would align the program cost with the program funding. In September 2024, the Board of Trustees of the College Savings Plan approved the office's recommendation to revise the funding. The office further indicates this funding change was analyzed by the program's contract actuary, which found the change in funding source would have no anticipated impact on the program's viability. During the budget hearing, this office spoke about the various enhancement request, and they indicated the full-time contract position would address the administrative work associated with the prepaid tuition program and expand outreach and other tasks to increase the number of program accounts. When asked why a contract position could not be shared with other programs, the office indicated the prepaid tuition program is unique, uses unique software, and much of the processes of the program are manual, requiring the use of a dedicated staff member. Regarding the marketing costs, the office indicated the increase would provide a level of funding closer to the amounts reflected prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. For the recommended change to the budget account, the office indicated this would align the funding with the administrative cost with the program cost. And the office also indicated that the legislature did not make any statutory changes to have this funding change be mandatory or permanent, when initially approving this change in fiscal year 2010. Accordingly, it does not appear any legislative changes are needed to allow for this funding change. Fiscal staff would note at the end of fiscal year 2023, the Nevada prepaid tuition program reflected actuarial value of assets of $408.8 million and an actuarial value of liabilities of $179.6 million, which provided a funded ratio of 227.5%. And this exceeds the policy of the Board of Trustees of the College Savings Plans of Nevada, which recommends a funding ratio of at least 120%. The office indicates that this funding status provides justification for this recommendation. Fiscal staff would note that this budget account should have reflected all decision units being funded with the existing funding source, with decision unit E500 revising the overall funding to reflect the recommended funding source change. And fiscal staff request authority to enter corrections as technical adjustments. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 40 of your packet. Do the committees wish to approve total funding of $170,583 over the 2025-27 biennium for various operating, travel, and system enhancements, and a revision to the funding source for this budget account so is largely funded by transfers from the Higher Education Tuition Trust budget account with funding totaling $2 million over the 2025-27 biennium, and fiscal staff request authority to make any necessary technical adjustments, including reflecting the funding source for all decision units as the existing funding source with the total funding source change reflected in decision unit E500. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved as read by staff.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other closing items on page 40 include out-of-state travel for staff, and fiscal staff recommends other closing item 1 be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions on the other closing items? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Backus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Moving on to the next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Millennium Scholarship Administration budget, and this can be found on page 41 of your packet. The Millennium Scholarship Administration budget account reflects the cost associated with administering the program, while the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund is not included in the executive budget and reflects the scholarship payments. The Millennium Scholarship Administration budget account is currently funded with transfers from the College Savings Endowment account, which provides funding through program management fees paid by the 529 plan managers. There's one major closing issue in this budget account, and that's the replacement scholarship system, funding revision, and various budget enhancements. Turning to page 42 of your packet, the executive budget reflects the following for the 2025-27 biennium, and that includes funding of $997.38 to replace the system utilized for the Governor Gwynn Millennium Scholarship Program, revising the funding provided to this budget account so it would only be supported by the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund beginning in fiscal year 2027, and funding of $15,782 for various budget enhancements utilizing the revised funding source. Regarding the replacement scholarship system, the office currently utilizes a legacy system that was created in-house approximately 25 years ago. This system cannot be supported by the Office of Chief Information Officer and experiences performance issues. The office indicates the new system would improve and streamline the processing of student data, would be able to connect to the most current version of the Microsoft operating system, and ensure that the current IT security protocols and functionalities are applied to the system. The funding sources recommended for the new system include transfers from the College Savings Endowment account of $48,849 and transfers from the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund of $948,189 over the biennium. Regarding the funding revision, historically, administrative costs for the Millennium Scholarship Program have been funded by two revenue sources. This includes the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund, which again is not included in the executive budget, that provides scholarship payments and receives its funding from tobacco settlement revenue, transfers from the abandoned property trust account, and one-time general fund appropriations, as well as interest earnings. The other funding source is the College Savings Endowment Account that receives its funding from program management fees paid through the state's 529 College Savings Plan. Prior to the Great Recession, this budget account was funded with transfers from the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. However, during the 2009 legislative session amidst the Great Recession, the legislature approved various changes intended to extend the financial viability of the Millennium Scholarship Program. This change included revising the funding source for the budget account from transfers from the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund to transfers from the College Savings Endowment Account. This funding mechanism has been used from fiscal year 2010 through the present day, but the executive budget recommends a funding revision, so the budget would be funded with transfers from the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. I would note that although this budget account may utilize the two funding sources, there are current statutory limits on the funding that may be provided, and that is provided on page 43 of your packet. And this includes Nevada Revised Statute 396926 that limits the amount of tobacco settlement revenue that may be used to support the administrative costs to no more than 3% of the tobacco settlement revenue deposited in the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. Nevada Revised Statute 353B 350 also allows the College Savings Endowment Account to be used to support the administrative cost, but that revenue source cannot exceed 3% of the tobacco settlement revenue deposited in the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. So combined, this provides a total of 6% administrative funding cap or a 3% administrative cap if only one of these sources is used. The governor's recommended budget reflects, again, the replacement system, and largely due to that increased expenditure, the governor also recommends revising the funding source to support the budget account from transfers to Millennium Scholarship beginning in FY 2027 forward. To implement this change, a bill draft request was submitted to increase the current 3% funding cap reflected in NRS 396926 to 10%. And that would provide all funding for this administrative cost for the Millennium Scholarship Program with the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund from fiscal year 2027 forward. On page 44 of your packet, I would note that although the funding revision for this budget account would appear to increase the use of tobacco settlement revenue to fund these administrative costs, the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund utilizes all its revenue sources to provide scholarship funding. And this funding revision would affect the total available funding for the program. I would note that the Millennium Scholarship Program often requires a one-time general fund appropriation from the legislature to support the demand for scholarships, with most recently the 2023 legislature approving Senate Bill 486 that provided a $75 million general fund appropriation for the program. The office also provided its revenue and expenditure projections for the program, and it appears additional funding would be required for the scholarship program in fiscal year 2028, with or without the funding source change as provided on the table on page 44 of your document, which reflects a negative balance of $17.9 million projected by the office at the end of fiscal year 2028. So the revised funding methodology would reduce funding in the Scholarship Trust Fund by $2 million over the 2025-7 biennium, and would otherwise provide funding for approximately 200 scholarships based on the current program guidelines that allow for scholarship funding of up to $10,000 per eligible student. I would note the executive budget also recommends various budget enhancements, including a customer shared relationship management system and the office's cost allocations, and these enhancements would be funded based on the revised funding source recommended for the upcoming biennium. During the budget hearing, the office spoke about the various recommendations in the executive budget, including the replacement scholarship system. And the office indicated a safe, functional system is critical since it receives and stores students' identifiable data and determines ongoing eligibility for receipt throughout a student's eligibility period. The office indicated its current system has escalating performance issues and is unable to meet current security standards. It also consulted with the Office of the Chief Information Officer, which was unable to assist with the maintenance of the existing system. Therefore, it would replace the existing system with a more robust system that would meet the program's needs, reflect current security standards, and remove manual processes. The office also indicated the funding source change would align funding for the Millennium Scholarship administrative costs and the program costs to the same source, the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. The office also indicated that prior legislature approved the use of College Savings Endowment Account. However, it did not make statutory changes requiring that only that source be used, and it was never meant to be permanent. To fund the recommendations in the executive budget would require passage of legislation, as I previously mentioned, and a bill draft request has been submitted by the Governor's Finance Office. The combined 13% administrative cap that would be provided through the bill draft request would only, and future fiscal year expenditures to be supported by the 10% administrative cap provided by the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund. I would also note that in March 2025, the office provided fiscal staff with updated revenue projections for the tobacco settlement revenue, which are reflected on the table on page 46. Although it does provide updated revenue projections, additional funding would still be required in fiscal year 2028 through likely a one-time general fund appropriation by the 27 legislature. Given the effect this change would have on possible one-time general appropriation that may be needed in the future, the committees could consider maintaining the current funding source for this budget account, which are transfers from the College Savings Endowment Account. If only a single funding source was to be approved by the committees, either funding source could provide the necessary revenue for this budget account with an administrative cap of 13%. And the expenses reflected in the executive budget, it would be under that amount and provide for a buffer for unanticipated costs. And the table on page 47 of your packet reflects that, with 11.3% of the administrative cap being used in FY26 before dropping to 6.8% in fiscal year 27. Although the current administrative cap is related to the tobacco settlement revenue deposited in the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund, I would note the College Savings Endowment Account does not receive any tobacco settlement funding. And given there's no relationship between tobacco settlement revenue and the College Savings Account, and the tobacco settlement revenue has decreased in recent fiscal years and is projected to decrease in future fiscal years. Since this may lead to a future legislature needing to further increase the funding cap in statute, the committees could consider eliminating the funding cap entirely if it chooses to maintain the current College Savings Endowment Account as the ongoing funding source. I would also note this budget account should have reflected all decision units being funded with the existing funding source, with decision unit E502 revising the overall funding to reflect the recommended funding source change up to the appropriate funding cap amount, and fiscal staff request authority to enter these corrections as technical adjustments. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 48. And Madam Chair, I would like, maybe I could take these as two items. The first is related to the expenditures, and that is decision point A. For the enhancements recommended in the executive budget, do the committees wish to approve funding of $997,038, net of funding reductions due to the elimination of expenditures for services originally planned to be provided by the Office of the Chief Information Officer to fund the cost to replace the system utilized for the Governor Gwynn Millennium Scholarship Program, and funding of $15,782 over the 2025-27 biennium for this budget account's portion of the shared customer relationship management system and adjustments to the office's cost allocation. And Madam Chair, I'll stop there.
Thank you so much for that. That was a lot. And as you look at the decision unit on page 48, I would, as chair, like to suggest that we go with B to I. Any discussion on that? A and then B to I. I am so sorry. Let's go back. We're going to go with A, and then we'll go down to the B section. So, members, any questions? It's a big decision unit. We're going to do it in two parts. So we'll take the A first. Any discussion on that? Okay. Okay. Not seeing any discussion? Then I'll accept the motion.
I move that we approve A1 and 2.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you,
Now
Madam
go on.
Chair. So option A, or decision point A was related to the expenditures. Now decision point B is the funding for those expenditures. So for the funding of this budget account in the 2025-7 biennium and future biennia, do the committees wish to approve B1, revising the funding provided to this budget account as reflected in the executive budget, so it would be supported by both the College Savings Endowment Account and the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund in fiscal year 26, and only the Millennium Scholarship Trust Fund beginning in fiscal year 2027. If this option is chosen, a statutory change would be needed to increase the administrative cap reflected in NRS 396.926 subsection 7 from 3% to 10% as proposed in the Governor's Budget Implementation Bill. Or B2, maintaining the existing funding source provided to this budget account so it would continue to be supported by the College Savings Endowment Account. If this option is chosen, do the committees also wish to reflect the statutory change to I, increase the administrative cap reflected in NRS 353B 355B from its current level of 3% to 3%, or II, eliminate the administrative cap reflected in NRS 353B 355B. As noted, the Governor's Finance Office submitted a budget implementation bill to reflect revisions to the funding cap, which the committees will consider at a later date and possibly amend based on their closing actions. Fiscal staff request authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments, including reflecting the funding source for all decision units as the existing funding source, with the funding source change, if approved, reflected in decision unit E502.
Okay, now for the funding side of this decision unit. After hearing all of our options, I would recommend and accept a motion for B2I and also give fiscal staff the authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments, including reflecting the funding source for all decision units as the existing funding source with the funding source change, if approved, reflected in decision unit E502.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other closing items can be found on page 49 of your packet, and this includes this budget account share of the cost of the public official insurance bond. And fiscal staff recommends other closing item 1 be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to enter other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions on the other closing items? Not seeing any. I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget account can be found on page 51 of your packet, and this is the College Savings Endowment Account. And this account receives its funding through program management fees paid by 529 plan fund managers. There are no major closing issues in this account, and other closing items include reduced and increased transfers to various budget accounts. And on page 52 of your packet includes a reduction to transfers to the Millennium Scholarship account, and the transfer accounts do not align, and fiscal staff request authority to enter technical adjustments to align these amounts. Similarly, the transfer amounts do not align with other closing item number 4 with the Nevada College Savings. Fiscal staff recommends other closing item 1 be closed consistent with the committee's action in the Higher Education Tuition Administration Budget Account 1081, and the revision to the funding source of the prepaid tuition program's administrative costs in that budget account. Other closing item 2 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing item 3 be closed consistent with the committee's action in the Millennium Scholarship Administration Budget Account 1088, and the revision to the funding source for the Millennium Scholarship Program's administrative cost in that budget account. Other closing item 4 be closed with the noted technical adjustments to transfers to the Nevada College Savings Trust budget account and request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much for that long decision. Members, any questions? Not seeing any, I'll accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to
Thank you.
our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the unclaimed property budget, and that can be found on page 55 of your packet. And there's one major closing issue in this account, and that's additional staff for the unclaimed property program. The governor recommends total transfers of $168,063 over the biennium for one new administrative assistant position and additional contract staff by increasing the funding for a contract position from part-time to full-time. And these positions will be located in Las Vegas and support the unclaimed property program and the review and processing of claims. The office indicates it has seen an increase in the number of properties and claims processing, as approximately 177,000 claims were initiated online in fiscal year 2023 before increasing to approximately 217,000 in fiscal year 2024. The office indicates it has implemented a new unclaimed property management system as well as promoting the program through social media and national campaigns. Would note that NRS 120A 640 requires the unclaimed property division to approve a claim or provide written notice of the decision to the claimant within 90 days. And the office in January 2025 indicated it had a backlog of 77 days, but it indicated its staff often works overtime to address the workload. The office indicates the new administrative assistant position would perform various customer service tasks, such as answering phones, responding to emails, and assisting walk-in customers, and the contract staff would provide additional administrative support. The office would note the office historically in the legislatively approved budget shared a contract position between this program and the prepaid tuition program, and the office did not fully utilize that funding as indicated on the table on page 56 of your packet. During the budget hearing, the office indicates that it safeguards more than $1 billion in unclaimed property. It also indicated the new administrative assistant position would increase the use of the contract staff were both needed due to the increase in claims. The additional staff would enable existing staff to focus on the more difficult processing of claims, while those lower level positions could work on the simpler claims. The office also indicated that staff is currently working overtime to provide the necessary coverage, and it indicated that the use of the contract staff between the unclaimed property program and the prepaid tuition program is not ideal, since each program uses its own system, has its unique rules and guidelines. The office also indicated that a majority of its claims are no longer being fast-tracked for approval and being approved without additional review by staff, since it implemented a new software system in July 2024. And this ultimately increases the workload for it and review by staff. The table on page 57 of your packet provides some workload measures for this program, including an increase in overtime, increase in average daily claims, a decrease in the average daily claims not requiring manual review, as well as an increase in the average day to review claims. The office indicates that if only the administrative assistant position would be approved, it would be a positive impact on reducing wait times. However, it recommends both staff resources be provided, since it would be better able to reduce claim processing wait times and meet the statutory requirement day of 90 days. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 58 of your packet. Do the committees wish to approve total transfers of $168,063 over the 2025-27 biennium from the Abandoned Property Trust account for a new administrative assistant position and additional use of contract staff to support the unclaimed property program? Fiscal staff requests authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? All right, not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other closing items can be found on page 58 of your packet, and this includes cost allocation changes, this budget account share of the public official insurance bond, travel, as well as equipment replacement. And fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 4 be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you, members. Any questions on the other closing items in this budget? Not seeing any. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
I have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Moving on to the next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget is the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank, and this can be found on page 59 of your packets. The Nevada State Infrastructure Bank provides loans and other financial assistance to qualified borrowers for certain infrastructure projects throughout the state. I would note the office maintains other budget accounts that are not reflected in the executive budget that account for the bonding and loan activity, and this budget before you only reflects the administrative costs only. There's one major closing issue for this account, and that's an update on the operation of the bank and a funding revision. The governor recommends funding of $730,055 over the 2025-27 biennium for the operation of the bank and revising the funding source from transfers of unobligated reserve interest from the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund budget account to proceeds generated from bank activities. As background, the bank was transferred from the Nevada Department of Transportation to the State Treasurer's Office effective July 1st, 2023, after SB 10 was approved by the 2023 legislature. This budget account includes 2 positions, an unclassified executive director position, as well as an administrative assistant position. However, the executive director position has been vacant throughout this current biennium, with the senior deputy treasurer providing necessary support for the bank. NRS 226784 requires the governor, to the extent that money is available, to appoint an unclassified executive director to the bank who serves at the pleasure of the governor. There is a funding revision recommended by the governor, and this budget account reflects the administrative costs associated with the bank, and it's currently funded with unobligated reserve interest earnings transferred from the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund budget account. But the governor recommends funding the bank's administrative costs utilizing funding provided from bank loan origination fees, interest earnings, and principal payments. And it would appear that these funding sources would generate $695,176 in the 23 current biennium and $8.4 million in the 2025-27 biennium, as indicated on the table on page 61 of your packet, which reflects the loan origination fees, the principal payments, and interest payments from the loans that have been provided by the bank to date. Under the governor's recommended budget, this budget account would not receive general fund appropriations, and the bank was historically provided with authority to utilize unobligated reserve interest earnings transferred from the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund through back language of the Authorizations Act. However, that authority would not appear to be provided under the governor's recommendation. Therefore, there were questions related to the cash flow of this account. Although NRS 226787 appears to allow the bank to utilize loan origination fees, interest earnings, and principal payments to support its operations, utilizing principal payments to support the bank would reduce and limit its ability to provide funding for additional projects. Therefore, the committees may wish to consider to have the bank only utilize its loan origination fees and interest earnings to support its operations. This would allow original funding for loans to be intact and available for future projects. And it would appear that the amount of funding provided by loan origination and interest earnings would provide approximately 5 times the amount of funding currently reflected in the executive budget for the bank's administrative costs. And this could be established through budget policy through the closing by the committees. During the budget hearing, the office indicated that the vacant executive director position it became vacant during the transition from the Governor Sisolak administration to the Governor Lombardo administration, and the office confirmed that it has utilized its senior deputy state treasurer position on a part-time basis to support the bank. However, it did indicate that the funding for the executive director is provided in the executive budget, and that funding would be available when the governor decides to appoint someone to that position. The office indicated that it did not anticipate any challenges with funding the bank's administrative costs with loan origination fees and interest earnings in the upcoming biennium and in future biennium, and it indicated that it would integrate these structural changes to new loans that are issued by the bank in the future. The office also indicated it is confident that these revenue sources are sufficient for all administrative costs anticipated for the upcoming biennium, and this budget account would not need any type of alternative funding. If the committees wish to fund the bank's administrative costs with loan origination fees and interest earnings in the upcoming biennium, the office indicates language would be needed in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program Bill to allow for that usage. Alternatively, if the committees wish to continue the use of unobligated reserved interest earnings transferred from the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund budget account to fund the bank, language in the 2025 Authorizations Act would be needed. The office indicates that it's working with the state's bond counsel on the appropriate language, and fiscal staff request authority to include enabling language in either or both bills based on the action of the committees, as well as input from the state's bond counsel. So the decision for the committees can be found on page 63 of the packet. Do the committees wish to approve revising the funding source for the operation of the Nevada State Infrastructure Bank from transfers of unobligated reserved interest from the Bond Interest and Redemption Fund budget account to proceeds generated from bank loans, and establish budget policy allowing the bank's administrative cost to only be funded utilizing loan origination fees and interest earnings? Fiscal staff requests authority to enter any necessary technical adjustments and include any necessary language in the 2025 Capital Improvement Program Bill and/or the 2025 Authorizations Act based on the action of the committees and input from the state's bond counsel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Assemblymember Koenig.
Thank you. So I'm looking at that first paragraph on the top of page 62, and where the earnings would be 5 times the amount, if it's, and is that what this recommendation is? Is that we're taking that recommendation to, I mean, for the decision under the "and", is that what that's doing that gives us the 5 times the amount of money? Is that what that is recommending? Or
Madam Chair, through you to the Assembly member.
You can go directly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on page 61 of your packet, you can see that there's a subtotal for the origination and interest payments of $1.1 million in fiscal year 2026 and $2.3 million in fiscal year 2027. That provides a total funding of $3.5 million that is anticipated to be generated from origination and interest payments. And the governor recommends total expenditures of $730,000 over the biennium. So that's how I calculated that 5 times amount.
Senator Neal, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at the chart on page 71, and I heard everything you said, and it's written, that they said that the loan origination fees and the interest payments are sufficient.
Did you say page 71?
No, 61.
Okay,
No,
thank
I'm
you.
not on 71. No, if you could, sorry. No, I'm in 61. So I'm trying to understand, well, there's a couple of things, right? So not all, when you look at 26, FY 26 and FY 27, have loan origination fees, number one. Then when I looked and I mean, I wasn't here, right? And I apologize, Chair. But for Opportunity 180, there are no loan origination fees. And then the interest payments are like super low. And so I guess the question that I have when we talk about sufficiency, how are we determining who gets what origination fee or interest payments and whether or not that's going to be sufficient? It seems to be, I don't know, different for each entity. And so, when I see the blanks on the loan origination fee, specifically for like FY 2027, I'm just, this is me trying to understand how that rises to sufficiency, yes? Okay.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Adam Dross with the LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. So that was discussed during the hearing, and the office indicated that the origination fee, you generally see it in the first year when the loan is granted. However, some of those fees are built into the repayment schedule, as I recall. And some of that information can be provided on the middle of page 62 of the packet regarding interest and some of those fees. So there's additional detail there. Does that address your question, Senator?
It does. I'll just wait until, the next time this pops up to really dig into the specialness of it.
And Madam Chair, just to clarify, Opportunity 180 did have its loan origination fee in fiscal year 2024, as reflected on the table on page 61.
Thank you. Any follow-up? All right. Seeing no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Other closing items can be found on page 63 of your packet, and this includes cost allocation changes, the public official insurance bond, and out-of-state travel. And fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 3 be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Members, any questions? Not seeing any. I'll accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair.
We have a motion from Senator Dondero Loop, a second from Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to our next budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final 3 budgets were not previously heard by the committees, for which staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations. I will pause following each budget to allow for questions, and when I have presented the last budget in this group, I will request a single motion for closing consideration on all of those budget accounts. And the first of these budget accounts is the municipal bond bank revenue account, and that can be found on page 67 of your packet. And the municipal bond bank account was created by the 1981 legislature to assist municipalities in undertaking local projects. This allows the state to sell general obligation bonds with the proceeds provided to the local governments, who then provide the funding to support those items. Local government entities also save on bond issuance costs as a result of the bonds being pooled and the state releasing only one bond offering. I would note the State Board of Finance must approve the issuance of these bonds, and the principal and interest payments by the local governments are collected in this account, and then funds are transferred from this budget account to the municipal bond bank debt service budget account that you'll hear next to pay the principal and interest payments. Would note there are no general fund appropriations in this budget account. There are no major closing issues in this account, and the other closing items include Authorizations Act language, with the Treasurer's Office requesting that language be included in the 2025 Authorizations Act, consistent with prior biennia, allowing for work program revisions to be requested through and approved by the Governor's Finance Office for this budget account without requiring approval of the Interim Finance Committee for budgetary revisions that are necessary for the purpose of bond repayment cost. And I would note similar language was included in Section 19 of the 2023 Authorizations Act, Senate Bill 504, and this request appears reasonable. Are there any questions on this account?
Members, are there any questions on the municipal bond bank revenue? Not seeing any, we'll move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next budget can be found on page 69 of your packet, and this is the Municipal Bond Bank Debt Service, and the committees have not previously reviewed this budget account. And this account was also created by the 1981 legislature and is related to the prior budget in that funds are transferred into this budget account from the Municipal Bond Bank Revenue Budget Account to pay the principal and interest payments on the state-issued general obligations bond. There are no general fund appropriations in this budget account. There are no major closing issues, and similar to the other budget account, the state treasurer, other closing items include the state treasurer's office request that language be included in the 2025 Authorizations Act, allowing for work program revisions without approval of the interim finance committee. And this is consistent with the 2023 Authorizations Act. And I'm available for any questions.
Members, are there any questions on the municipal bond bank debt service account? Not seeing any. Let's move on to the last one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The final budget is found on page 71 of your packet, and this is the Nevada College Savings Trust, and the committees have not previously reviewed this budget account. And this budget reflects the annual program management fees the Nevada College Savings Program receives from its 5 qualified 529 investment firms. There are no major closing issues, and other closing items include a cost allocation changes, the public official insurance bond, travel and training, and this budget account share of the customer relationship management system. Are there any questions on this account?
Members, any questions on the Nevada College Savings Trust? All right, not seeing any.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the motion for those staff closing budgets can be found on page 73 of your closing packet. And fiscal staff recommends that the following budget accounts be closed as recommended by the governor and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary. 7451086, the Treasurer Municipal Bond Bank Revenue, including approval of inclusion of language in the Authorizations Act as noted in the other closing item. 3951087, Treasurer Municipal Bond Bank Debt Service Account, including approval of inclusion of language in the Authorizations Act as noted in the other closing item. And 1011092, Treasurer, Nevada College Savings Trust. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. With that, I will accept a motion.
So moved, Madam Chair, as read by staff.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Senator Dondero-Loop and second by Assemblymember Bacchus. Any discussion on the motion for these three accounts? Not seeing any. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you so much. Members, that was our last budget for today, and that takes us up to the last item on our agenda, and that is public comment. I'll again give you the number if you'd like to call in. It is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID is 875-584-09-829. Then please press pound. If you would like to make public comment and you're here in Carson City, I invite you to the table. Not seeing anyone come to the table here in Carson City and not seeing anyone in Las Vegas. Broadcast, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment at this time?
To provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers wishing to provide public comment.
Thank you so much. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. I'll see you all tomorrow morning.